People don't know what's happening with the Trump thing. Is this a recession? Are people going to be trading with us? Are they not going to be trading with us? Sometimes it feels like, are you waiting for someone to die before you kind of clasp down on this stuff? There's so much stuff coming from Vietnam, like concrete form. It's not stamped. It's not strength tested. For example, in Victoria, there was that one site where the floor collapsed. We thought it might be that Vietnamese concrete form that collapsed. Why do we have to go through all this authorizations to get, we're certified by the APA, strength tested, and we pay all these fees to make sure everything's perfect, yet these guys just come. The thing how we get hurt is 40% of Canada's construction market is Ontario. So in Ontario, you got the steel workers, the car manufacturers. They don't know if they're going to have a job or not tomorrow. They don't know if it's going to be a recession. So they're not building houses, they're not buying houses, and they're not renovating houses. So if they're not doing that, we're going to be slow. On the other side, our stuff that goes to the US, same thing.
I'd like to welcome you to the ForestNet Media podcast. Thanks for welcoming us into your world today at Richmond Plywood, Richply. You've been someone that's been on my radar as a media professional in the forest industry. I've seen you over the last few years. We've published you in our magazine. I've seen you achieve a number of awards and top 10 under 40s and a number of business awards. So I'm happy to be here chatting to you today about your role as a Chief Financial Officer at Richply. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Welcome to Richply.
Thanks very much. Yeah. And thanks very much for having us. So We just did a tour of the facility. Thank you very much. That was really, eye-opening to me. First time I've been through a plywood facility. We want to talk to you about your professional career, your professional role at Richply, how you got here, what makes Richply a great place to work, what makes Richply sustainable financially. In this time of financial crisis in the industry, I think that's I think you bring a really unique story to this podcast. So let's get right into the nitty gritty, straight away. Like, we're in this kind of period where we're hearing a lot of negativity about the industry in British Columbia right now. What sets Richply apart from others in the industry, and what has made this business sustainable here for over 50 years on the Fraser River in Richmond, close to metropolitan Vancouver? How is this business different from others?
Yeah, so as you said, next year it'll be almost 70 years for Richply. We started in 1956. It's a unique structure. We're a co-op. So when we started in 1956, 300 investors came together, pooled $5,000 each to buy a tract of land here in Richmond, which grew to a 27-acre facility, which it is today. Still a co-op structure. So we have shareholders. Obviously, the share prices have now escalated to much higher, but the structure is still the same. We have about 245 shareholders in the company, which are essentially the owners of the company. And then overall, we have about 400 plus staff employees that are working on the site. It's a 24/7 facility running, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's no such thing as curtailing at Richply, because we're seeing, since the employees that are the shareholders have taken out mortgages to buy those shares, we owe them a job. So it's kind of seen as an employment center. So where other mills, if it slows down, other mills may, curtail or shut down for a bit. Richply doesn't do that. So instead of running, 24/7, we might run to a 5-6 schedule, or the lowest we'll ever do is a 5-day work week. But we can't go slower than that. So I think that gives us a little bit of an advantage when we're buying logs as well. Sellers know that Richply is never going to go down. It's just going to be a constant flow of logs going to Richply. Vice versa, on the other side, when we're selling our chips to companies such as Harmac, the Nanaimo Forest Products, they know that they have a steady supply of chips coming in, because again, Richply is not going to shut down, right? So that gives us a lot of, both buying and selling power in the industry. And plus, we've been here for 70 years. So I think everybody knows that, we're quite sustainable. Myself, I joined about 5 years ago in 2021. My background's, I'm a chartered accountant. I worked for a couple of big four accounting firms as an auditor before I came here. I worked with PwC, KPMG, which is called public practice. And then after that, I went into industry, became a controller for a real estate investment company that owned about $1 billion worth of real estate across North America, mostly industrial buildings and office towers. And at that time when I was working for them, obviously COVID hit. Obviously the whole work from home began.
Yeah.
And a lot of our office towers, suddenly people were paying the penalties to break their leases. For example, Shaw, Telet, all these large companies wanted to break their leases because their employees were moving to a work from home type arrangement. For companies, that was a plus. A, they're saving on their lease. B, the employees at home using all their own utilities. Right. At that time, I wasn't looking, but it just kind of worked out that a recruiter reached out to me saying, hey, there's a manufacturing facility in Richmond that's looking for a CFO. Are you open to that? At that time, I don't have a forestry background, but since I was an auditor, I had worked with a lot of different types of businesses, which did include manufacturing businesses, such as I was the auditor on Kruger Paper Products in New West. So I kind of had an idea, right, how it worked. I had an interview, met with the president, met with the board of directors, and here I am. So joined, it's been quite successful. We've done a lot of things that Richply hadn't done before. When I've joined, I didn't even know what Richply was. When I looked at the website was from, I don't know, maybe 1956 it felt like. So, you go on the website, the first thing that was on there was claims. Yeah. I was like, okay, does this place have a lot? And, you would think that if that's the first thing, it must have a lot of claims or issues with the wood. We barely have any claims. It was just a bad website. So we have a new website design that came out 5 years ago. We tried to, attend a lot of industry events. We tried to give a face to Richply, right? Everybody kind of dealt with Richply, but they didn't really know who or what Richply really was. It was kind of like a hidden gem. So, the reason we did that is because since it's employee owned, it's a good news story, right?
Yeah.
Born, bred Canadian mill owned by Canadians. The money is being reinvested in locally Richmond. And we never actually got any government funding previously. So that was one of the new things that we wanted to do is we were like, hey, we're putting in 10, 15, $20 million of new machinery in our mill yearly.
Yeah.
Without any support, with only the shareholders' money or the Richply's money being reinvested. The government should support us. We've been here. We're a staple in Richmond. We've been here for 70 years and, we should get some sort of support. So we applied to the BC Manufacturing Job Fund. We applied to the IFIT, which is the Investment Forest Innovation Technology Fund, which is a federal fund. First time ever we applied that year, we ended up getting about $10 million in funding. And that was all due to, meeting people, telling them our story, asking them to come visit our facility, our manufacturing facility, come see the people and see what we're actually doing here, right? Once we had the Minister of Forests, we had the Premier, we had, just recently, we had Melanie Jolie, federal minister, our MPs, our local MLAs. Once they started walking through the site, they're like, hey, this is huge. Right? You have 400 plus people working here. That's 400 families right off the bat that you're supporting locally in BC. And plus all our vendors, customers, if you include those, probably close to 10,000 people that we're employing, right? That's 400 families right off the bat that you're supporting locally in BC. And plus all our vendors, customers, if you include those, probably close to 10,000 people that we're employing, right?
Actually,
yeah, that's right.
You've got local dealers such as Finning supporting you.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount of families that you support directly, but also beyond that, a lot of suppliers.
Of course, yeah, we got all the big names, Cat, Finning, Raute, Hashimoto. Yeah. We have all those guys, and then we're supporting everybody on the river too. We got Hodder Tugboats, Catherwood, Quadrant Towing. We're trying to support everybody. And then, of course, we buy from our logs from our largest suppliers are Mosaic and Western Forest. Mm-hmm. But we do try to buy from everybody. As long as they're on spec, on length, we try to support the whole forest industry, right? Because at the end of the day, we're kind of a family, right? Like when you see Crofton or any of these other mills go down, it affects you, right? You're like, they're no different than us, right? Like those people had families just like we do inside the mill too. So it's tough, right? Like, for example, that Harmac mill I was telling you in, I think 2006, 2007, they actually came over here to see our structure because they were on the verge of bankruptcy as well. And then they actually implemented the same co-op structure as Richply where their employees bought into the mill. And now Harmac is thriving. All our chips actually go to Harmac, right?
That co-op model, it's a vastly different model where your shareholders are actually your employees as well.
Yeah.
So, the business has a responsibility to support its shareholders.
Yeah, that's
which
right.
in effect are its employees versus this different model, let's say, of some of the other larger manufacturers in British Columbia, which have a model to support their shareholders globally.
They may be like, it might be supported by a Malaysian billionaire for all you know that owns a company. You don't know, right? So our structure is actually really unique, and it's actually cool because every year, and this I'll kind of go into, every year we have an election. So as long as you're not a supervisor or a foreman or holding any sort of managerial position like a superintendent in the mill, you can run for the board of directors. So the board of directors get elected. We have an annual general meeting. There's a voting prospect to that. They vote. They pick a board of 7 individuals. Then those 7 choose a vice president, and then president or chairman of the board, president of the company. And the 2 individuals out of the 7 that have the most votes, they stay on for 2 years for continuity. The other 5 will be up for re-election every year. And so when your president is being chosen every year, it's really hard to put a face to Richply, right?
Yeah.
So we also have an executive team. The executive team is made up of the VP of sales, general manager, manager of log supply, and then myself, the CFO.
Yeah.
So the general manager is more dealing with the mill day-to-days. Like, as you mentioned, 27 acres, there's a lot to manage here. So he's general manager of technically the mill. And then VP of sales, our whole sales department is run by him. Manager of log supply deals with, like, as I mentioned, Mosaic, Western, our tenures as well. I'll go into that as well. We have a few tenures. And then I run myself the finance team. And then it was decided that kind of we need a face to Richply who can kind of attend these meetings with the government, right? So since the finance side is the side that was dealing with all the funding, trying to apply for BCMJF, trying to find for IFIT, it was decided that I'm probably the best person to talk. Try to meet these MLAs, try to meet these MPs, these ministers, the premier, and try to get our name out there, and also try to tell them what's the issues that we're facing, right? So that kind of just snowballed into, I'm attending these conferences. I'm like met you at TLA, wherever it may be. And now it's kind of recognized that, hey, Richply is attending these things. Richply is out there. So that's kind of how that came about.
And it's great to see, it's for me, being in this world, we see a lot of people in the industry, but, it's great to see someone young and ambitious and willing to get their name out there and willing to tell the story of the final product coming out, and host, people like myself, open with willing arms,
Of course.
So we really appreciate that. Let's back up into your story. You're an accountant.
Yeah, I'm a chartered accountant.
Chartered accountant.
Yeah.
So, you've gone through university study into that role. How have you found that transition into the world of manufacturing and forestry? You seems like you jumped in, with open arms to learn and a willingness to learn, which I can definitely.
Yeah. So, like when I started, my first day here, I was like, hey, so when do I get the tour of the mill? Everybody looked at me like, what? Why you want to do the mill? I was like, well, if I'm going to look at the financial statements, I need to know what each item is on the financial statement. And so then they're like, okay, yeah, we'll get the general manager to give you a tour. And I gave a tour. And they're like, nobody's ever, like the previous CFOs, controllers, whoever, nobody's ever toured the mill. And I was like, well,
kind of crazy.
So I was like, well, how do you set up your financial statements? How do you do a 5-10 year forecast budget, whatever, like looking ahead without knowing what your company actually does, without seeing what the raw materials are, without seeing what you produce, without seeing where the money is being, like your capital investments are being put, what those capital investments are doing. How do I write the story? Whether it be for funding, whether it be for SHRED, which is scientific research, tax credits, whatever it is that I'm trying to claim, I need to know what's happening in the mill, right? And that was really shocking to me that the previous individuals never looked at it, which made sense. That's probably why we never got any funding, and our SHRED claims were horrible back then, right? But and now we walk through it. Everybody knows, like they see me out there, they recognize me, they know we're trying to get money from the government. We're trying to make it more recognizable. We're trying to get people walking through the mill. Like we even started up like people we've met at conferences and stuff. We used to say, back 50 years ago or 30 years ago, we walked through there with my UBC class, my UBC forestry class. Well, who stopped that, right? So we started that up again. We want those students to walk through our facility, right? We started up a co-op program with local high schools, right? If individuals want to have like a red seal mechanics or electrician, whatever it is, come practice it here, right? Spend 2 weeks with one of our electricians or one of our mechanics in the mobile shop. You'll learn lots, right? So we're trying to make it into something that's community. That's our way of kind of giving back to the community. Yeah. But also, it's a dying trade almost, forestry, right? Like, I would say, trying to make forestry sexy again, but like, that's mass timber these days. Nobody talks about plywood these days, right? But, that's great. Mass timber is awesome too. But don't forget, plywood's the original engineered wood product, right? It's used everywhere. So, it's just unfortunate that sometimes, when governments or whatever are focusing, they kind of focus on like, it might be minerals or they might go into like, for example, mass timber, and then a certain portion of the industry gets forgotten, right? And it's only when something like Crofton or industry shuts down, they're like, oh yeah, we should have focused on the lumber side a little bit more. But anyways, I think that's another question down your list, right?
Yeah. I mean, you can tell walking through the facility that there's a real sense of family in the facility. Everybody's smiling and happy and you know, saying hello and that sort of thing. But one of the things that really struck me walking through the facility today was the amount of technology and innovation that is in there. And you know, it was really apparent because in some cases you had a piece of old machinery
side by side
to something that had been updated. So
we'll never get rid of the manual. We'll always keep the manual there as a backup. And plus we have that duty again to employ. So just because we introduced AI that may use less employees, we try to upskill the employees that were on that machine to be doing something else. So we'll never cut our employee count. That's not the goal here, right? So we'll always try to, if anything, we're trying to raise the employee count because we can use them in different ways, or more experienced employees to power or run these new AI type machines, because they do take a different caliber than just manual labor, right? But we'll never get rid of our manual machines too. We'll at least keep them side by side, because if something does happen to that, Richply doesn't shut down. So we have our manual or our steam boiler that I showed you. So Richply is completely steam powered. Obviously, there's parts that are electrically powered, but if you run or go over the Knight Street Bridge, you see that white stack of smoke going up. That's all steam. You can do a facial if you wanted to, right? And then to that boiler, we have a backup boiler, which the person was describing to you as well. And then for that boiler, we also have another backup. So Richply will never go down regardless. If a machine goes down, there's always a backup machine. So we have a lot of redundant, or I guess backup equipment in place, just because it's very important for us to run 24/7, as I mentioned.
And in this time of crisis and curtailments, you know, it really is exciting for us to see a company investing heavily in new technology, you know, and walking through the facility today, you know, you've got 20 acres undercover. We were blown away with the amount of new technology in there, you know, AI scanning, the plugs that you showed us, the different sanding machines.
Patch lines and all.
Patch lines. So can you speak about like getting the funding and the motivation together to do that?
So the reason is, like, you know, it's unfortunate. We're in British Columbia. We're surrounded by all this forest. But like, for example, like if you go to oil provinces like Alberta, they're surrounded by oil, cheapest gas prices, blah, blah. We're surrounded by forestry. We have the most expensive fiber in all of the world. Doesn't make sense, right? So, and then they want us to do more with less. We're not allowed to touch old growth, right? Yet they want us to keep the forestry industry alive. So how do we do more with less? We have to become more efficient. We need to make sure there's no wastage. So such as that composer machine, where if there's different sizes of veneer that you can't use anymore, it sews those pieces together to make a usable sheet of veneer.
A plywood sewing machine. I've never seen that.
That's right. All the machinery is trying to become more efficient, more effective, so that we can stay competitive on the global stage. Because on the global stage, because of our fiber costs, otherwise we can't be competitive. Right? So like there's a big like fiber cost, stumpage fees, the whole red tape with the government. It's a big roadblock for a lot of companies. And to remain competitive, you got to think outside the box. So putting in all this AI machinery, trying to become more efficient, making less wastage is the only way we can try to save a little bit so that we can still be competitive on the world stage. Because, you know, there's so much wood coming in from South America, plywood from South America. There's so much stuff coming from Vietnam, like concrete form. It's not stamped. It's not strength tested. Yet it comes here. There's like a little bit of a gray area where, you know, if they're using it on sites, it doesn't get checked because the building inspector doesn't come till the building's standing to inspect. This concrete form is actually used to pour the concrete, and then those pieces are discarded. So it's kind of a little gray area, right? And then contractors find out that, hey, you know, you can buy this stuff from Vietnam cheaper than what I can even produce it for. So it's a no-brainer for them, right? And it's a gray skill, but it's that thing where, like, you know, for example, in Victoria, there was that one site where the floor collapsed, the concrete floor collapsed. We thought it might be that Vietnamese concrete form that collapsed, but there's no way for us to find out. WCB hasn't released that information, right? But sometimes it feels like, you know, are you waiting for someone to die before you kind of clasp down on this stuff? Because we've made some noise about it. Like, we've reached out to politicians saying, like, this stuff is in the market. It's not safe. Why do we have to go through all this authorizations to get, you know, we're certified by the APA and it's strength tested, and we pay all these fees to make sure everything's perfect. Yet these guys just come here without any stamps or anything, right?
Let's try and break that down for the general public. If you were to think about a single sheet of plywood and how much it costs you to produce, how much of that cost of production is government regulation?
So I'll say it this way. Our two largest costs, number one is logs, so the fiber, which is controlled by the government. And number two is payroll, wages. Right? So for us, fiber is number one. That's the number one cost. You know, we hear it all the time from people, you know, stumpage fees are so high. Well, if stumpage fees are high, if there's a lot of red tape, that log is going to cost me more to buy.
And on directly to you. I mean, for example, we were speaking to Peter Lister, the executive director of the TLA yesterday. And he made the example that one of his logging contractors, the cost of planning has gone up from $4 a cubic meter to $14 a cubic meter.
Oh, yeah, I believe
so. So that cost is handed on directly to you as a producer of plywood. So the cost of fiber.
If that log was 130, now it's going to be 145 or 150, right?
Yeah.
So
it's, and that's just one cost. That's just planning. That doesn't include diesel, you know, salary,
whatever else they have to pay for all the way.
So
and it's not just the cost. The other big thing is the timelines. Like it takes 2-3 years for things to get passed through. Like we own a couple tenures. We own 10 years in Britannia on the way to Whistler. We have tenure in Port Hardy as well. It's not the type of fiber that we use, so we lease it out. But these individuals who lease it out from us, they haven't been able, like the one of them in Port Hardy hasn't had a permit for 2 years, a cutting permit. Still waiting. And yet they're still paying us. So how long do you wait till that whoever's leased it from us says, hey man, like I can't keep waiting. I can't keep paying the lease and the government's not giving it. And then on top of that, you know, there's all the other stuff like the First Nations have overlapping claim and stuff. And, you know, I understand like they deserve their portion too, but there should be some sort of protocol that's followed so that the process can be a little bit faster. It just seems like everybody's kind of just, I don't know, it's kind of up in the air sometimes, right? So like, you know, almost a year ago, I think when Ravi Palmer came, he said everything's going to get sped up, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know if it truly has yet. And you know, it truly might not be his fault because, you know, all the red tape that, or all the stuff that he may hit, right? In government, right? He may truly is trying to do things.
I believe
but once you get into the government side, you know, there's so much he can really do, right? So, you know, and the people that get affected is us, right? And other producers like us. Or the other thing that we see is like a lot of our tenure, you know, we had about 100,000. The Port Hardy one was about 100,000. It's come down to 39. Actually, no, this year the government took another 3,500 back. So we only have 36,000 left. Right? Because every year they cut back a little bit. So sooner or later it'll be gone, right? So, but yeah, like there's a lot of things like that. But getting back to what I was saying, in order to remain competitive on a world stage, that's why we've introduced a lot of these, a lot of this machinery that you saw out there is essentially to save cost, become efficient, save that fiber, don't let it get chipped or become wood. At least try to, like I said, that sewing machine, keep that piece of veneer and put it into a finished product.
So
overall,
it sort of sounds like you're controlling the things that you can control.
That's exactly it, right? Like for us, you know, we've been on the West Coast 70 years. We use all 5 species here: fir, hemlock, spruce, pine, and balsam, right? And then sales-wise, we do about 70% of our product is sold in Canada. 20% is sold to the States, and then 10% is sold to Europe, Asia, etc., right? But the thing is that 20% that's sold to the U.S. is our money-making high-end product, right? So obviously nobody had Trump on their bingo card for 2025. He's here now, right? At the start of the year, we were always wondering, you know, it's only a couple of months. Now we know it's not going anywhere, right? So we tried to diversify to different markets as well. But, you know, what it is it's not that the reason is, like lumber, for example, has tariffs. Plywood doesn't have tariffs on it, right? So, but the thing how we get hurt is 40% of Canada's construction market is Ontario. So in Ontario, you got the steel workers, the car manufacturers. They don't know if they're going to have a job or not tomorrow. They don't know if it's going to be a recession. So they're not building houses, they're not buying houses, and they're not renovating houses. Those are the 3 things that use plywood, right? So if they're not doing that, we're going to be slow. On the other side, our stuff that goes to the US, same thing. People don't know what's happening with the Trump thing. Is this a recession? Are people going to be trading with us? Are they not going to be trading with us? Again, they're not building, buying, or renovating, right? So that's the reason why our market has become so slow at the moment.
But there seems that the structure that you've created, that Richply has created here, has been able to ride those waves of market conditions. And
Yeah, that's right. So Richply,
you mentioned that Richply will go into a situation where they're losing money for some period of time, and
that's right.
Follow the market.
Yeah, that's right. And that kind of goes back to how I was describing. It's almost like we're an employment center, right? So when these individuals spend $500,000 to buy a share or 600,000, whatever it may be, they're taking out mortgages, right? So we owe it to them that, we don't take that job away. So even if Richply has to operate in a market where we're not making any money or not too much money, we will still run, right? Because we have that due care to the shareholders inside. It's their company, right?
Yeah.
So that's also why a lot of different log sellers or suppliers want to partner up with us. Again, going back to that, hey, Richply is not going to sell or shut down, right?
Yeah.
So when a customer is not going to shut down, you don't have that curtailment worry or, hey, if they shut down, where am I going to get my chips? Or if they shut down, where am I going to sell my glue or adhesive or whatever it may be that we're buying, right? So that gives us a little bit of a competitive advantage as well when we're negotiating contracts and stuff, because it does hold weight, right?
Yeah.
That this is a guaranteed purchase for however long the term is, right? Where other contracts might have that clause in there that unless we curtail, we will keep buying it, right?
It's certainly a model that I think our listeners and our audience and the general public would be interested in hearing about. I mean, that's why we're chatting about it. But yeah, it's definitely a different model, and like I said, you can feel that sense of family on the mill floor, and it's very clean, and it's
that's another comment we always get. It's very clean. That's right.
Yeah. So there's a sense of pride here at Richply, and people.
That's the other part of it, right? Like we don't compete on price. Our like the slogan says, quality since 1956. Our product sells because of the quality. So we don't compete with other companies that may be sheathing mills or mills that are pumping out plywood but may not be the same spec as us. For us, our product sells because of the quality, and that's what we compete on. So we don't compete on price. So we don't try to be the low-cost producer. We don't try to be the cheapest in the market. You use our product once, and most likely you'll use it again, kind of thing. Yeah.
Let's break this down, like for people outside of the industry, the general public. How is a piece of plywood made? The general. I mean, you're bringing into this a lot of accounting and finance background, but you do have a lot of operational knowledge as well.
Yeah. So as you saw, it takes 27 acres to make a sheet of plywood, right? So the logs, we'll purchase the logs from different companies, as I mentioned, Mosaic, Western, Canadian Overseas. They'll bring the logs on the jetty near the airport. They'll get pulled in by a tugboat. Tugboat will bring them into our grounds here near Richply. So when you guys fly over or flying in and out of YVR, if you look down, you see the Fraser River, you see a lot of logs in the river. A lot of those are ours, especially the ones around Knight Street Bridge. So we, at any given time, we have about $30 million floating in the water.
Wow.
So depending on what the menu or the diet of the day is, the tugboat or our logging accountant will call in a tugboat, whatever the species is that they need. They'll bring it into our boom grounds. The boom boats will get the cherry picker to pick it up. It'll go through a debarker. The debarker will then take all the bark off the log. That bark is then used, obviously, it'll turn into hog fuel, which will supply
powers the entire
powers the mill. Exactly. Yeah. So it'll go into our hog fuel boiler.
Yeah.
That debarked log will then get cut into our size and our spec. And then from there, we have conditioning chests, depending on the type of species. It needs to be warmed up. The log needs to be cooked like a turkey, you could say. It needs to be warmed up to a certain species so that it could be peeled right. After it's warmed up, our cat loaders will pick it up, put it into the lathe. The lathe will peel the log
at an incredible speed.
That's right.
We saw those sheets of veneer coming.
That's right. That's right. So it'll peel it like an apple. It'll leave a little core. That core is then sold to another company for fence posts, whatever they may use it for, vineyards or whatever. That sheet of veneer is then needed to go into a dryer. The dryer will dry the sheet of veneer at a certain temperature. After that, depending on the grade and stuff. It'll go into a plugger line where if there's any defects, they'll get plugged.
Yeah.
Also, if there's any veneer that's not the right size, that machine that was the composer will attach 2 or 3 or 4 pieces of veneer that's not a usable side.
Sewing machine.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
It'll sew those pieces together so that you have a usable sheet.
Yeah.
And then remember I showed you the layup line where there's a layer of glue in each layer.
Yeah.
So the layup line is where you lay up different sheets of veneer together to give it that strength property. And then after that, it'll go into a press. It'll get pressed. After that, it'll have patching.
Patching.
Yeah. So we have an automatic patch line as well that I showed you that we recently installed. So that'll kind of plug small defects and sand them off.
Yeah.
After that, after the press and all that, will go into a sander, stenciling or painting, whatever it depends, and then strapping.
Yeah.
So depending on what the product is, we have a large list of products, marine grade.
Over 150 products, did you say?
More than that, probably, yeah.
Wow.
So we got like good one side is like the stuff that has a nice face on the front. We have marine grade.
Yeah.
We have the concrete form that I was mentioning. There's a lot of that coming in from Vietnam right now.
Yeah.
It's pretty much being dumped here. So that's taken away a lot of the market share. And there's one thing about that. That concrete form started really becoming an issue for Canada when the US blocked it. So the US saw the dumping happening where the government subsidizes the business, right? So I think there was in the Vietnam, Chinese side, it's being subsidized. They're dumping it into the US market. They finally said no more.
Yeah.
Like this is hurting our own producers. Stop. That's when they switched it. It all started coming to Canada.
Okay.
Right? On the Canada side, they haven't stopped it. So it's very hard for us to compete in there in the concrete form side stuff just because the price is so cheap. And there's that gray area where once they're using it, the engineers or the inspector, whoever it may be, they think since it's already in Canada, it must be okay. It must be stamped, right? And then the building inspector isn't checking that one. They're only checking the actual plywood on the building, right? Because that stuff's already gone. The concrete's poured.
Yeah.
So it's a little gray area. So we're hoping, somebody does something about that so that we can get that share of the market back because we are aggressively losing it.
Yeah.
There's only a few mills, I think, 3 or 4 mills in all of Canada that produce this type of concrete form plywood.
Yeah, pretty incredible stuff that we were seeing out there, and I do like to refer back to that the difference between the old technology and the new technology.
Yeah, you can see it side by side in a lot of different parts of the mill. Yeah, you can see the old stuff, or I guess the old machinery being used.
Yeah,
and at the same, because we still use the old stuff too. It's not like we turn it off, right?
Yeah.
And then side by side, you can kind of compare the differences and stuff too, right? The savings is in the wastage being reduced.
Absolutely zero waste.
Efficiency is a big one. So yeah,
it was quite incredible to see how clean the site was, and there was basically no waste.
Yeah.
Any of the chips, the high quality chips, are going to a partner pulp mill that you have. The hog
from the barge. You saw the barge being loaded on the river.
Loaded. Yeah. The hog fuel being loaded into the boiler to repower the steam in the mill. So a very self-sufficient system. Yeah, and very, very high tech. It's not like we're dealing with a the technology in there is pretty incredible.
Yeah, we've had like machines from a lot of different companies, and then also we've had machines created for us. Yeah, where they've worked with, like, let's say Convey and Argos have come together and created a machine for us. And then at the same time, it's cool because we have where you can be serviced by the water, we can be serviced by rail, CNCP, and then also obviously trucking from our shipping side of things. So we have a unique advantage that way too. If we need to train anything out or ship it that way, we can do that too.
What excites you about the forestry sector? You kind of jumped in with both feet into this sector, coming from finance and business management.
Yep.
What excites you about this sector going forward?
There's a little bit of worry and excitement at the same time. We see the BC government. They no doubt through the BC MGF we've had provincial funding that's helped us, and then through federal funding, the IFIT program, we've gotten money as well. And we've been doing this a long time. Like our hog fuel boiler we put in before the whole carbon footprint thing became cool. I think a year after we had implemented our boiler, they came out with carbon credits.
Yeah.
And we said, oh, we've just did this like 6 months ago. And they're like, sorry. Right? So had we waited 6 months, they would have probably covered half the cost of that project, right? But we were not doing it because, we were trying to get that. At that time, we were doing it because it was something more efficient for us, something better for the community. And we were planning to be here for a long time. So it just made sense for us to do, right? And the one thing that changes is when you have the owners actually working in the mill, they see the return on the investment. They see these machines in action. And they see that, okay, these investments are good, right?
Yeah.
Whereas if it's like, say, like, investors are offshore somewhere or in a different country, they may not value that same investment in a mill, thinking like, oh, why do they need that? They're okay with the machine they have, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of gives us the unique perspective too, right? And the reason you probably saw, like, everybody's doing something. Every machine's doing something that's very automated. And you see the forklifts, they're driving around like Mario and Andretti. Like everybody's doing something because, again, it's not just a clock in, clock out. Everybody's the owner.
Yeah.
So like as if you're running your own shop or your own business, you take that extra care and attention to make sure that product's correct for your customer. And that's kind of what you're seeing inside there is you're seeing all owners working together to make sure they have that high-end quality product so that tomorrow nobody can say that, hey, this happened with a Richply item.
Yeah. And it's pretty incredible to see also the way that Richply has positioned itself in the market where you're not so dependent on the US.
Yeah. That it's been like that for a long time. Yeah, only 20% of our product goes there. So at times, like for example, what's happening there now?
Yeah,
we're better off in Canada. But the thing is, like I said, the stuff that did go to the U.S. was our money-making products. So we're hurting just like anybody else. And we would like that business back.
If you had, a podium, something to say to the Minister of Forest, something to say to the Premier of British Columbia, what would that be?
I see them all the time, right? So I've mentioned a lot of these issues to them already about the concrete form and, like to speed up the permits and stuff like that. So I think they're well aware. Like Richply is no stranger meeting with them. Like they've come through our mill. We've met with them multiple times. They know us face to face and stuff. So I don't know if I have an exact question for them now.
Would that question be around, or would that be more around competitiveness and cost of supply of fiber and that sort of thing?
Yeah, just try to bring the cost of stumpage or fiber down. That would be a big relief to, I think, not just us, but everybody, right? Like especially the lumber companies, they're getting hammered with tariffs too. And then they're buying logs just like us, right? So, it's not like any cheaper for them, right?
Yeah.
They just have an extra 55% or whatever tariff on top, right?
Yeah.
So I know they've done a couple of announcements that they're going to reduce their train fees going across Canada, or they might put a initiative to use Canadian. These are federal initiatives to use Canadian lumber first in project, but that should already just be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Like, why is that happening now? Like, you should always be supporting Canada first, or our industries first, whether it be wood, metals, or whatever it is. All of those contracts, especially if they're government contracts paid with our tax dollars, they should be supporting Canadian companies, right?
Yeah.
That's how I would see it, right?
Yeah.
So,
at least in my eyes, there's been a huge amount of promises and funding. Has there been anything materially that's actually in the last, let's say, 6 months that's actually materially helped Richply, or are you still waiting to actually see that?
Yeah, for the last 6 months, I would have to say no. There hasn't been any real, just because actually, you know what? I should back up and say that there was a request when they were doing the retaliatory tariffs. We had mentioned a lot of the different plywood import codes weren't included. And we reached out to our federal government representatives, and they did make sure that those codes were included. And that did help us, right? Because when the U.S. plywood was coming north, they did have a tariff on it for that time being, which obviously helped our business. So, but other than, like, if you're asking actual funding, I don't think there's any actual funding initiatives, especially BC ones that have come out. The last one that I was aware of, there was actually one, which is the RTRI. I think it's the something tariff relief initiative, which is, I think, up to $1 million you can apply for if you're putting some sort of machinery in your mill that's keeping you efficient or help you competing with what's happening. We did apply for that. And there is one other one, actually. It's called the Business Scale-Up Plan, which you can get up to $5 million interest-free loan. And you have to pay back, I think, 6 years or 5 years after your project has been initialized. So I did see those two come up, the business BSP, it's called, and the other one's the RTRI. But other than that, I haven't seen, there might be something out there, but I'm usually pretty on it.
Well, you're a chief financial, obviously. That's your part of the job.
I'm usually trying to get on to any of those if I can. But the mills really were expecting a lot more help, I think. And then I think the government might reconsider how they're helping, especially with the last month, seeing the West Fraser 100-mile house mill shut down, seeing Crofton shut down. So I think they may do a little bit more, realizing that, these industries aren't surviving, right?
Yeah.
So I think the Crofton president made it pretty clear that for their mill, I think it was, they don't sell anything to the US, they were saying. So theirs was a BC issue, right? So I think that now's the time for the government to start seeing, that, everybody needs help, right? We're just one mill. There's a lot of other ones, just like we have families working here, so do all those, right?
Yeah.
So
there seems to be a lot of pointing the finger at the US when internal analysis in British Columbia is actually pointing the finger at ourselves in a lot of ways, and the competitiveness problem is self-made in British Columbia. We might be blaming the US right now, but a lot of that's actually
like I said before, right? Like I'm sure, the Minister of Forest, all these individuals are trying, but our government has been set up with so much red tape that, it might be a lot harder than what we think can happen at like a snap of a finger.
Yeah.
But I think after these last couple closures, they must be thinking something, right? I don't think the BC government wants to see more mills shut down, right?
Yeah.
So and that's kind of been the trend for the last 10 years, right? People leaving and closing up shop and going to the US.
Yeah.
But like I said, for us, we've had great relationships with the government. We've received money from the government for that machinery that you've seen inside. A lot of that AI equipment, I think 2.4 million of it was from the BC government. And another 6.7 was from the federal government towards that $20 million project. So, they are helping, but that was a couple years ago before the whole Trump thing happened and, all this market share was lost, right?
Yeah.
So I just don't want to see any more mills close, right?
Yeah.
That's my biggest concern, right?
Yeah.
It's tough when you see that, right? You think about those families. We work in a mill, you start comparing, right? So especially for the communities that are smaller, like Crofton. So, whatever gas stations, restaurants, whatever may be in that area, that's probably going to all shut down too, right? Mm-hmm. Usually in those kind of towns, the mill is the heart of the city, right?
Yeah. It seems that Richply has built, sort of like a shining light in the British Columbian forestry sector right now.
Yeah. They usually refer to us as like a success story, right? They want to sell. I wish the best to every other mill that's out there too, right? I think our structure is what's kept us strong. Having that owner-operated type structure where the individuals are in there, they know it's their hard-earned money that's been invested here, which gives them kind of that edge to kind of want to always be progressing forward. As I mentioned to you, every year we're buying, our capital spend on new equipment is usually $5 to $10 million bucks, right? We're trying to invest better items, better machinery so that we can become more efficient, more effective, faster, be able to produce more as long as we can sell it and, have a payback from it.
What do you think some of the common misconceptions are in the forest industry today?
I think like the general public doesn't really understand how forestry works, I think, right? So if you have a certain age of a tree, let's say call it 110 years or whatever it may be, it's not supplying oxygen anymore. That tree is doing nothing. That tree is waiting to either be burned in a forest fire and become an issue, right? So I think people don't understand that whole harvest prospect of the business. So obviously we're not harvesting trees, but for companies that are, if there was a better way to explain to the general public that, we're not just clear cutting or chopping down trees and killing the environment, because that's the general conception, right? Mm-hmm. Before I joined the forestry industry, I would think the same thing, right? Oh, they're clear cutting or something. I didn't care too much about it, but I'm just saying if I did care, I didn't know that, hey, after 100 years, that tree's not producing any more oxygen. I wouldn't think like, hey, that tree's probably just waiting to be lost in a forest fire and cause more issues. It may take out towns like Lytton or wherever, right? Or resources like the helicopters that take the fires out kind of thing, right? I think that's one of the biggest ones is the general public doesn't really know how that whole process works. That, when you take down a tree and then these companies plant a new tree, that new tree that's growing is actually providing oxygen and, that whole ecosystem, I think it's just not understood, right? Mm-hmm. And I think the other side is, you see all these protesters on the news. I think I saw one documentary. I don't know what the truth is. A lot of them are paid from the US, they're saying, right? Like a lot of these protesters are actually not from the town or even the local area of where they're protesting. Mm-hmm. They've been bussed down there and they're actually getting paid to do that because there's some sort of initiative or something on the backside, right? I don't really know a lot about it, so I don't want to speak on it. Yeah. But just things like that, right? Like if there was some sort of like educational thing where like, right now I keep seeing British Columbia YouTube ads about how the mineral mining industry is, so good for BC, blah, blah, blah. Like, don't forget about forestry.
Yeah.
Right? We were the originals.
Yeah.
Right? BC's built on forestry.
Yeah.
Right? So many mills have shut down in the last, let's say, 33, 4 decades, right? But the ones that are surviving are still doing well, and don't forget about them, right? Like, we're contributing to your local economy, to the wider provincial economy, the wider international Canadian economy, and the world economy, right? So I would just say that I think that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions is people, when they think forestry, they think cutting down trees, they think we're killing the environment, but it's really not that.
Yeah.
It's not that at all.
And there's a large sustainability part to that.
Yeah. So like all these companies that provide like Western Mosaic, whatever, they replant, right? And those trees grow again, right? It's just like similar to farming, right? You wouldn't ever say, hey, don't chop down don't take the blueberries off a blueberry bush.
Yeah.
Right? You wouldn't say, oh, don't take like the tomatoes, the lettuce, whatever you're planting. I don't know. I'm not a farmer. Or my parents, back in the day they were, but you know what I mean? Like, you would never say that. So forestry is not that different, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned like that British Columbia was built on forestry, and one question we are asking everybody is what is your interpretation of forestry? What does forestry mean to you?
Well, that's one of those kind of questions that you get asked at the end of an interview where you just kind of make something up, right? I don't know. What is forestry to me? It's funny actually, because so I'm born in '87. My parents came here from India in 1984. And at that time, my dad actually worked at Victoria Plywood on the island, right? And he became a shareholder as well. But unfortunately, I think by 91, that mill shut down, right? And they invested all their money into it. And it just disappeared, right? So I remember in 91, 92, my dad saying, I'll just pretend like I just came from India now in 93. Pretend the last 10 years of my life that I worked so hard for just disappeared. I'll pretend I restarted, right? And that was kind of like the immigrant mentality that, it's okay. We'll keep going. We'll build it all up again, right? And I think that's the story of a lot of these forestry workers, especially a lot of these mills in Mackenzie and wherever else that have shut down. It's one word, if I was to describe it, is resilience, right? They don't give up, right? Those people that lost their jobs in Crofton, they're not going to give up. They're going to try to build something bigger, better, and go somewhere else, right? They're hard workers, right? They're blue-collar workers in the mill. They know how to work. They're not scared of the work. They work 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever you can give them 6 days a week, they'll work it, right? This is not your general labor force that's asking, hey, how many sick days do I get when I get hired? It's not that kind of labor. So if I was to describe forestry in one word, one sentence or whatever, it'd be a community of hard-working individuals. Doesn't matter if you're in the mill or if you're out in the bush logging the trees, wherever you are, if you're in the boom boats or if you're walking the booms. It's an individual hard workers that are committed to their industry and they don't want it disappearing in BC. I can tell you that much.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an awesome answer. And I think, that you speak very well and
Thank you.
that you've dived right into this industry coming from financial background, and I would like to thank you sincerely for having us here and hosting us at Richmond Plywood, Richply. I look forward to seeing you in 2026 at the Council of Forest Industries, at the truck loggers, at the different events, and welcoming us with open arms today and joining us on the ForestNet Media podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, those conferences are a great way to meet individuals.
Yeah.
A lot of our, like our business with Western, Forest, all these companies, a lot of it started from conferences.
Yeah.
Right? Just meeting individuals, meeting, Hoffer or any of the other companies, presidents, CFOs, whatever, CEOs, whatever it may be. Just having conversations during lunchtime, dinner time, wherever it may be. Deals were made, right? That's why there's a lot of value in those conferences. I think
so, yeah.
You meet a lot of individuals that some just want to thank you for being a business partner, right? Yeah. And that means a lot too, right? Because I signed the checks, I've seen the name, but I don't have the face to a name, right? So when you meet these individuals at the conferences, it creates a sense of community. Yeah, right? It gives your business a little bit deeper meaning too, right? So you understand each other a little bit better, right? Yeah. And a lot of the stuff we do is we just pick up a call and call each other, right?
Yeah.
Hey, if a barge short, or I need an extra barge. It's just like, hey, no problem.
Yeah.
I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Take care of each other.
Yeah.
And that's what the forest industry really is everybody's just kind of working in tandem to make sure that everybody's successful.
Yeah, it's definitely, I really like your description, a whole bunch of resilient people working together, right? Yeah. And we are, that's what we're doing right now. We're all resilient, getting through this together.
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
yeah. But
Cool.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, really
Thank you for
appreciate it.
visiting.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Take care.
That's it. Cheers.